November 13, 1944, the Hürtgen Forest, Germany. A cold mist clung to the trees as Obersturmführer Klaus Werner peered through his Tiger tank's commander viewport, convinced the American armor they'd encounter would be no match for German engineering. His battalion of 5 Tiger I tanks had been sent to halt the American advance through this vital sector, and they expected nothing but the same inferior Shermans they'd been decimating for months. The Americans still don't understand that quality defeats quantity, Werner remarked to his gunner, unaware that in less than 48 hours this fundamental belief would be shattered, along with the armor of his prized Tigers. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. This is the account of how a single American weapon system changed the psychological landscape of armored warfare on the Western Front, transforming German tank crews from confident predators to vulnerable prey, and revealing how technological secrecy could become as powerful a weapon as the hardware itself. Hauptsturmführer Hans Gruber hunched over the map spread across the hood of his staff car. The veteran tanker had fought from Poland to Russia and back to Germany, surviving where many others had not. His weathered face, marked with a scar that ran from his left eye to his jawline, a souvenir from a Soviet artillery strike in Kursk, reflected the harsh light of the kerosene lamp. 5 Tigers should be more than enough, Obersturmführer Werner. Our intelligence suggests the Americans have only standard M4 Shermans in this sector, Gruber said, his finger tracing the line where they expected to intercept the American advance. Their 75mm guns can't penetrate our frontal armor unless they're lucky enough to hit at point-blank range. Werner nodded, the confidence of youth and training evident in his posture. At 26, he was considered a veteran, having commanded tanks for 3 years. The crews are ready, Hauptsturmführer. We've prepared ambush positions along these ridge lines. He indicated several positions on the map. The Americans will have to funnel through this valley. We'll have superior elevation and firing positions. Across the lines, Captain Robert Matheson of the 634th Tank Destroyer Battalion reviewed his own maps inside a camouflage command tent. The rain pattered against the canvas as his operations officer, Lieutenant James Harrington, pointed to the latest intelligence updates. Reconnaissance reports 5 Tiger tanks moving into defensive positions here, Harrington said, circling an area of the Hürtgen Forest. They've likely been detached from the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion to shore up their defensive line. Matheson's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. At 34, he had risen quickly through the ranks, known for his methodical approach and calm under fire. Perfect. They don't know what's coming, he said, allowing himself a small smile. How many M36s can we bring to the engagement? 6, sir, all armed with the new 90mm guns. They're fully operational, and the crews have been training with the new ammunition. Matheson nodded. The M36 Jackson was America's newest tank destroyer. While it used the same chassis as the older M10, it featured a crucial upgrade, the powerful 90mm M3 gun, capable of penetrating a Tiger's armor at combat ranges that would keep the American vehicles safe from return fire. This weapon had been kept remarkably secret from frontline German units. The Germans are still expecting us to field M10s with 76mm guns at best. Tactical surprise will be complete, Matheson said. Have the M36s ready to move at 0400 hours. I want them in position before dawn. Back at the German position, Unterscharführer Dieter Hoffmann inspected his Tiger tank's tracks in the fading light. As the most experienced driver in the unit, having survived 3 years on the Eastern Front, he took personal responsibility for his vehicle's maintenance. "How does she look?" asked his commander, Obersturmführer Werner, approaching with a mug of ersatz coffee. Hoffmann stood, wiping his grease-covered hands on a rag. "The left track tension needs adjustment, but otherwise she's combat ready. Sir, though we're down to only 68 rounds of ammunition. Werner frowned. That's all? What about fuel? 3/4 tank. Enough for combat, but we'll need to be conservative with maneuvers. This was the reality of Germany's war in late 1944. While their Tigers remained formidable weapons, shortages of everything from ammunition to fuel constrained their operational effectiveness. A Tiger consumed 53 gallons of fuel per 62 miles traveled when fuel was available. In contrast, American supply lines stretched back to factories producing 53,000 military vehicles every month. It will have to be enough, Werner said, taking a sip of the bitter coffee substitute. We make every round count, quality over quantity, as always. The unit's radio operator, Gerhard Fischer, approached with a clipboard. Signal from headquarters, sir. American activity reported 5 kilometers south. Their usual reconnaissance pattern before an armor push. Werner nodded, feeling the familiar tension before battle. Alert the other commanders. We maintain radio silence until engagement. Use the signal flares as planned. As night fell across the Hürtgen forest, both sides prepared for the coming engagement, each confident in their own advantages, yet neither fully understanding the shock that awaited. In the pre-dawn darkness, Sergeant Frank O'Neill of the 634th Tank Destroyer Battalion checked the breech of the 90mm gun inside his M36 Jackson for the third time. As the gunner, he took pride in his weapon's maintenance. The massive gun dominated the turret, making the interior cramped but giving the vehicle its lethal punch. "You keep fondling that gun, I'm gonna get jealous," joked Corporal Pete Morales, the loader, as he organized the ammunition rack. Each 90mm shell weighed 24 pounds, and in the heat of battle, Morales would need to load them swiftly and without error. "This baby's going to surprise the hell out of those Kraut tankers," O'Neill replied, patting the gun. "They think we're still rolling with the old 76mm pop guns." Lieutenant David Cooper, the vehicle commander, dropped down through the turret hatch. "Cut the chatter. We're moving into position in 5 minutes. Remember, we hold fire until Captain Matheson gives the signal. We want all Jacksons to open up simultaneously for maximum psychological impact." Cooper had been with tank destroyers since North Africa. He'd seen American armor struggle against superior German tanks and had lost friends to Tigers and Panthers. The M36 represented something new, American armor that could fight German heavies on equal or better terms. "What's our ammunition load, Morales?" Cooper asked. 40 rounds of APC, sir, 20 HE, and 10 HVAP rounds," Morales answered, referring to the different types of ammunition. The armor-piercing capped rounds were standard anti-tank shells, the high-explosive rounds were for soft targets, and the high-velocity armor-piercing rounds were the newest addition, tungsten-cored shells that could punch through a Tiger's frontal armor at 1,000 yards. "Save the HVAP for confirmed Tiger sightings," Cooper instructed. "Those rounds are worth their weight in gold." Indeed, they practically were. Each HVAP round contained tungsten, a strategic material so valuable that when fired, artillery crews in some units were ordered to recover the shell casings to salvage any tungsten fragments. America produced 350 tons of tungsten in 1944 compared to Germany's 500 tons, a production ratio of 27:1. At 0600 hours, the German Tigers were in position. Spread across a 2-kilometer front, they commanded excellent fields of fire down into the valley where American forces would need to advance. Werner's Tiger occupied the central position, with 2 tanks to his left and 2 to his right, spaced far enough apart to avoid presenting a clustered target, but close enough to provide overlapping fields of fire. Werner scanned the misty valley through his binoculars. "Visibility approximately 800 meters, he noted to his gunner, Unterscharführer Kurt Müller. Müller, a mathematics teacher before the war, made the necessary adjustments to his sighting equipment. Ranging shots calculated, sir. First target acquisition should be accurate to within 5 meters at that distance. The standard Tiger I carried 92 rounds of 88mm ammunition when fully stocked. Werner's tank had only 68, still enough for a sustained engagement, but requiring judicious use. The 88mm gun could penetrate 100mm of armor at 120 meters, more than enough to destroy any American tank they had yet encountered at comfortable distances. "Movement Sector 3, reported the loader, Schmidt, who was using the commander's auxiliary periscope. Werner swiveled his binoculars. Through the morning mist, he could make out shapes moving along the valley floor. Armor, definitely. American. Can't identify the type yet. "Shall I engage, sir?" Muller asked, his hand on the gun controls. "Not yet. Let them come closer. I want confirmed kills, not wasted ammunition," Werner replied, adhering to standard German tank doctrine that emphasized patience and precision. What Werner couldn't know was that he was being watched. On a forested ridge 200 meters to his right flank, Lieutenant Cooper's M36 Jackson sat in a hull-down position, with only its turret and gun visible above a small rise. "Tiger spotted, bearing 285, range 200 meters," Cooper said quietly into his throat microphone, relaying the position to the other 5 M36s spread across the American line. "Hold for Captain Matheson's signal." In the command M36, Matheson observed the German positions through a powerful spotting scope. "They've positioned exactly as expected. Textbook ambush formation for the valley approach," he noted to Lieutenant Harrington, "but they haven't spotted our flanking position." The American plan had been simple but effective. While sending a small force of regular Sherman tanks forward as bait, they had moved their M36 Jacksons into positions along the ridgeline opposite the Germans. The Jacksons' dark olive-drab paint blended well with the forested terrain, and their profile was similar enough to the M10 Wolverine that even if spotted, the Germans would not recognize the new threat. "All units report ready, sir," Harrington said, checking off confirmations on his clipboard. Matheson nodded, watching as the German tanks focused their attention on the approaching Shermans. "Send the signal. All units fire on designated targets on my mark." Across the American line, gunners like O'Neill laid their sights on specific Tiger tanks, adjusting for range, elevation, and the slight morning breeze. "Target acquired," O'Neill reported to Cooper, his eye pressed to the gunner's scope, the crosshairs resting on the side armor of Werner's Tiger. "Steady," Cooper said. "Wait for the signal." In Werner's Tiger, the tension was building. The American vehicles were now clearly visible, a column of Sherman tanks moving cautiously up the valley. Werner counted 8 of them, a significant force, but still outnumbered in terms of firepower by his 5 Tigers. "They've taken the bait," Werner said with satisfaction. "All units hold until my signal. We'll open fire simultaneously at 800 meters. Müller adjusted his sighting mechanism one final time. "Target locked, Obersturmführer, 850 meters and closing." Werner raised his hand, prepared to give the fire order that would initiate what he expected to be another successful ambush. The Shermans were advancing directly into their kill zone, apparently unaware of the danger. That's when everything changed. A single flare arced into the sky from the American lines, not from the valley where the Shermans advanced, but from the ridge to the Germans' right flank. "What was?" Werner began, but his words were cut short by a tremendous boom that echoed across the valley. 1,000 meters away, Obersturmführer Heinrich Keller's Tiger erupted in flames as a 90mm shell from Cooper's M36 punched through its side armor, igniting the ammunition storage. The turret blew off in a catastrophic explosion that sent it cartwheeling 20 meters through the air. Before the German commanders could react, 5 more 90mm rounds slammed into the remaining Tigers. Werner felt his own tank shudder violently as a shell struck the turret ring, jamming it in position. Another round penetrated the engine compartment, and thick black smoke began to fill the fighting compartment. "What hit us?" Mueller shouted over the ringing in their ears. "That wasn't a Sherman." "Abandon tank," Werner ordered, reaching for the hatch as flames began to lick at the engine bulkhead. "Everyone out now!" Across the German line, the scene repeated itself. 3 Tigers were completely destroyed in the first volley, their 45-ton frames transformed into burning hulks. A 4th was immobilized, its track blown off and gun damaged. Only Werner's tank and 1 other were able to return fire, shooting blindly at the ridgeline where the devastating fire had originated. "Target the flashes!" Werner shouted to Muller as he prepared to evacuate. Muller managed to fire once before another 90mm shell slammed into their tank, this one penetrating the fighting compartment. The shell didn't explode inside. It didn't need to. The kinetic energy alone sent lethal fragments of their own armor ricocheting around the interior. Werner felt a burning pain in his leg as a steel splinter tore through his thigh. Hoffman, the driver, was slumped over his controls, unmoving. Muller was still alive, but bleeding heavily from a head wound. Only Schmidt, the loader, seemed relatively unharmed. "Help me with him," Werner gasped to Schmidt, pointing at Muller. Together they managed to drag the injured gunner out through the commander's hatch as the tank began to burn more intensely. From his position, Captain Matheson observed the devastation through his binoculars. "Cease fire on disabled vehicles," he ordered. "Target any tanks still operational." The one remaining operational Tiger was attempting to retreat, backing up the ridge, while firing defensively. 3 M36s concentrated their fire on it. The first shot severed its left track, immobilizing it. The second penetrated the lower hull. The third struck the turret face-on. Even the Tiger's formidable 100mm frontal turret armor was no match for the 90mm HVAP round at that range. The German tank shuddered to a halt, smoke pouring from every hatch. "All enemy vehicles neutralized," Harrington reported, the awe evident in his voice. "Total engagement time, 3 minutes, 12 seconds. The Sherman tanks, which had been the bait, now advanced cautiously, securing the valley floor. The M36s maintained their positions, watchful for any German reinforcements. Matheson nodded, satisfaction mixing with solemnity. "Send recovery teams for wounded and prisoners. I want those disabled Tigers examined before they burn completely. Technical intelligence will want details on how our rounds performed." The entire engagement had been a shocking demonstration of the new balance of power. 5 Tiger tanks, which could have decimated a similar number of Shermans, had been destroyed or disabled by an American weapon system they hadn't known existed. The psychological impact would prove as significant as the tactical victory. Werner sat on the ground 50 meters from his burning Tiger, a field dressing wrapped tightly around his thigh. Schmidt had managed to pull Müller to safety as well, though the gunner remained unconscious. Of Hoffman, there had been no chance for rescue. "What hit us?" Schmidt asked, his young face streaked with soot and confusion. "That wasn't a Sherman. The impact was too powerful." "I don't know," Werner admitted, watching as American infantry approached cautiously, weapons raised. Something new. 2 days later, Hauptsturmführer Hans Gruber stood before a table in the Tactical Operations Center, 20 kilometers behind the lines. On the table lay fragments of armor and an intact shell casing recovered from the battlefield. Senior officers from the Wehrmacht's technical division clustered around, faces grave. 90mm, the technical officer concluded, measuring the shell casing. "American, this is from their new M36 tank destroyer. We've had intelligence reports, but this is the first confirmed encounter in our sector." Gruber picked up the shell casing, feeling its weight. "Can our armor withstand it?" The technical officer hesitated. The frontal armor of a panther or king tiger at optimal angles and at ranges over 1.0 meters. Possibly. The tiger eye is vulnerable at combat ranges we previously considered safe. Rain. The implications settled heavily on the assembled officers. For years, German tanks had maintained a qualitative edge that partially offset the Allies' numerical superiority. A single Tiger could engage multiple Shermans with relative impunity, destroying them before they could close to effective firing range. That calculation had now changed. We lost 5 Tigers and 20 crew members to these new tank destroyers, Gruber said, his voice tight with anger and grief, because we had no warning, no intelligence about this weapon's deployment in our sector. It's not just the gun, the technical officer added. Our prisoners report the Americans used a new type of ammunition as well. Tungsten cord, higher velocity, better penetration. Another officer, a logistics specialist, cleared his throat. We have no comparable tungsten reserves. Our tungsten alloy production is at 7% of American capacity. The numbers told the story of a war that was becoming increasingly one-sided. American factories were producing tanks and anti-tank weapons in quantities the German industrial base couldn't hope to match. In 1944, America produced 17 565 Sherman tanks, while Germany managed only 1 758 Panzer IVs and 1 768 Panthers, a production ratio of 5:1. The American 90mm gun that had devastated Werner's Tiger Company could be produced at a rate of 100 per month. Germany struggled to produce 50 of the comparable 80mm PK-43 anti-tank guns monthly, a production ratio of 20:1. While the Germans introduced impressive weapons like the King Tiger tank with its 150mm frontal armor, they built only 489 total. During the same period, America built 2 324 M36 Jackson tank destroyers, each capable of defeating even the King Tiger at combat ranges, a production ratio of nearly 5:1. Back at the American headquarters, Captain Matheson was writing his after-action report. The engagement had exceeded expectations. All 5 German Tigers neutralized with no American vehicles lost and only 3 wounded crewmen. Sir, technical intelligence finished their examination of the captured Tiger, Lieutenant Harrington reported, entering Matheson's office with a folder of documents. They're calling our engagement a textbook example of how the M36 should be employed against heavy German armor. Matheson nodded, continuing to write. And the prisoners? Being processed now, sir. The Tiger commander, an Obersturmführer Werner, keeps asking what hit them. He seemed genuinely shocked when told about the 90mm gun. That was the point, Matheson said, looking up from his report. Tactical surprise is a force multiplier. The Germans have been fighting with a psychological advantage for years, their tankers believing they're invulnerable to our weapons at certain ranges. We just shattered that belief. In the prisoner processing center, Werner sat on a bench, his wounded leg propped up before him. American medics had treated him efficiently. With the same sulfur drugs and plasma his own side had run short of months ago. Across from him sat an American intelligence officer, Lieutenant Benjamin Cohen, who spoke fluent German. So you had no intelligence about our M36 Jackson? Or its 90mm gun? Cohen asked, making notes on a clipboard. Werner shook his head. Nothing. We were told to expect M4 Shermans with 75mm guns, possibly some with upgraded 76mm guns. Nothing that could penetrate a Tiger's armor at range. He paused, looking directly at Cohen. Your gun, it went through our side armor like it was paper. Cohen nodded. The 90mm can penetrate 150mm of armor at 1.0 meters with HVAP ammunition. Essentially, there's no German tank that can safely engage it from any angle at normal combat ranges. The information hit Werner like a physical blow. The foundational tactical doctrine of German armored warfare, superior firepower and armor protection compensating for numerical inferiority, had been negated. "How many of these M36s do you have?" he asked. Cohen smiled slightly. "I can't give you specific numbers, Obersturmführer, but I can tell you our factories are producing them faster than you're producing Tigers. Much faster." The psychological impact of this revelation spread throughout the German armored units on the Western Front in the weeks that followed. Tank commanders who had previously maneuvered confidently, knowing the limitations of American weapons, now approached every engagement with uncertainty. Was that a regular Sherman on the ridge, or one of the new tank destroyers with its lethal 90mm gun? The doubt alone changed tactical decisions, making German commanders more hesitant, less aggressive. After 2 weeks in the American field hospital, Werner was transferred to a proper prisoner of war camp in France. There, he encountered other tank commanders who had similar stories of sudden, devastating encounters with the new American weapon. "They hit us from 500 meters, recounted a Panther commander from the 2nd SS Panzer Division. "3 of my company's tanks destroyed before we even identified the firing positions. We always thought we were safe at that range from American guns." Another Tiger commander nodded grimly. "It's not just the gun, it's their production. For every tank we lose, they replace it with 3. For every tank we build, they build 15. This was the harsh reality of industrial warfare. By late 1944, the technological edge that had sustained German armored forces was eroding. While the production gap was becoming an unbridgeable chasm, Germany's peak monthly tank production reached 450 units of all types in December 1944. During the same period, American factories produced 3 553 tanks and 2 153 other armored vehicles, a production ratio of nearly 4:1. When factoring in British and Soviet production, the Allies were outproducing the Axis by more than 8:1 in armored vehicles. A German Tiger tank required 300 man-hours to produce. A Sherman tank took 42 man-hours, making American production 7 times more efficient. Captain Matheson's successful ambush became a case study in the tactical employment of the M36. The 634th Tank Destroyer Battalion went on to destroy 53 German tanks over the next 4 months, including 17 Tigers and 24 Panthers, while losing only 7 of their own vehicles. The once fearsome Tiger tank, which had terrorized Allied armor since its introduction in 1942, was now vulnerable. The mystique of German technological superiority, carefully cultivated through years of propaganda and real tactical advantages, began to crumble in the face of American industrial might and technological innovation. In April 1945, as American forces pushed deeper into Germany, Matheson's battalion was assigned to support the drive toward the Elbe River. By now, German armor resistance was sporadic and disorganized. Fuel shortages had immobilized many of their remaining tanks, forcing them to be used as static defensive positions, expensive, immobile pillboxes. During a rare, quiet moment, Lieutenant Cooper approached Captain Matheson as he studied maps for the next day's advance. "Sir, remember that first engagement with the Tigers back in November?" Cooper asked. Matheson looked up, nodding. "Of course, our first real test of the M36 against Tigers. Why?" "I was just thinking, those German tankers had no idea what hit them. They went from predator to prey in an instant," Cooper mused. "Must have been one hell of a psychological shock." "That's warfare, Lieutenant," Matheson replied. "Technology, tactics, morale. They're all connected. Break one link, and the whole chain fails." The story of the M36 Jackson and its 90mm gun is more than just a tale of technological advancement. It represents a pivotal psychological turning point in armored warfare on the Western Front. German tank crews, who had long operated with the confidence of technical superiority, suddenly found themselves vulnerable to American weapons at ranges they had considered safe. This realization spread through the German armored forces like a contagion of doubt. Tank commanders became more cautious, less willing to engage, more prone to withdraw when facing unknown American units. The psychological advantage shifted decisively to the Allied forces. For Werner, now recovering in an American POW camp, the experience forced a complete re-evaluation of the war. The myth of German technological invincibility, which had sustained morale even as the strategic situation deteriorated, had been exposed as just that, a myth. American industry was producing weapons that matched or exceeded German quality, and in quantities that German factories could never hope to match. "We never had a chance," he confided to Schmidt, who had ended up in the same camp. "Not really. We were fighting the world's largest industrial power with an economy the size of Greater New York. The outcome was inevitable." Schmidt, still young enough to believe in miracles, shook his head. "If we had just known about their new weapons, we could have adapted our tactics." "No," Werner replied, the hard lessons of war having stripped away his own illusions. "You can't adapt tactics to overcome a 10-to-1 production disadvantage. America could replace every tank they lost. We couldn't. It's as simple as that." By war's end, the M36 Jackson had proven itself one of the most effective tank destroyers of the conflict. Its 90mm gun could defeat any German armored vehicle at combat ranges, earning it the nickname Slugger among American crews. A total of 2 324 were produced, more than the combined total of Tiger I, Tiger II, and Panther tanks Germany managed to field throughout the entire war. The United States would produce 88 410 tanks and 44 857 other armored vehicles during World War II. Germany would produce 26 916 tanks and assault guns, a ratio of 4. 9-1. This disparity in production capacity, combined with innovations like the 90mm gun, made the outcome of the armored war on the Western Front a mathematical certainty. For German tankers like Werner, who had once believed in the qualitative superiority of their vehicles and training, the sudden appearance of the M36 Jackson represented more than just a new threat on the battlefield. It was the moment when the foundational myth of German technological supremacy, a belief that had sustained morale through years of retreat, was finally and irrevocably shattered. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II, and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.